reputation that's known throughout the land. They say I'm faster on the draw than any living man. They call me a bad man, they say I kill for fun. They say the only thing I know is how to use a gun. But they don't know the reason they branded me as bad. It started many years ago when I was just a lad.
So pretty much everything you need for this project you should be able to find at your local hardware store. Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace, they'll all have pretty much everything you need. You'll want one 2x4 for each stand, and then two of these 2x3 boards for the posts. They're a bit cheaper than the 2x4s, but they're a bit lighter, which is why I use them for the posts and not for the base. I like to use a 2x4 for the base because it's a bit heavier, more durable, and that's not going to be something you replace. That'll be a permanent fixture for these target stands. Now you'll need screws. 2.5 inches is pretty much perfect. You can use exterior screws, but you can also use drywall screws. They're a bit cheaper. You'll need a saw to do this. Miter saw works, or a handsaw, driver and drill bit, tape measure, speed square, or a ruler, a pencil, and then, of course, the screws. Now you're only going to need one 2x4 to create the entire base because they're about 92-93 inches. We're going to make them 18 inches wide and then have 24-inch feet. Most targets, like the USPSA ones or the NRA D1 targets, as shown here, are 18 inches wide. So this is the size we're going to make our target stand as far as width goes. So we're going to cut out two 18-inch long pieces. These are the more precise pieces, so try to cut them as close to 18 inches as you possibly can. And one mistake you want to avoid is measuring and marking every 18 inches or every 24 inches and then cutting them all at once. Mark it, cut it, and then mark it again. The saw blade width is going to take up some of that space, so don't just mark everything on the board at once and then expect to cut them all and have them actually be the right size. Now you should have two perfectly even 18-inch pieces that'll make up the width of your target stand. Now we're going to want to cut two 24-inch pieces from that same 2x4. These don't have to be as precise, so you can just quickly mark it and then cut it. It doesn't matter if they're exactly 24 inches. These are just the feet, so they'll keep the target stand standing. Don't worry about making them super precise. Now you should have your two 18-inch pieces as well as your two 24-inch pieces. Now you take your 2x3 post and measure 3.5 inches. We're going to use this as our spacer piece, so you're going to want to cut one of these from each of your target stand pieces. So here I am cutting one from my first post, and then I'm going to measure it from my second post and cut the same section off. These don't have to be super precise either. Just try to get them as close to 3.5 inches as possible, and I'll show you how exactly we're going to use these in just a second. Now I'm making 5 of these target stands. So for each target stand I have 2 18-inch pieces, 2 24-inch pieces, 2 3.5-inch pieces, and then here are all my posts. They've all had that 3.5 inches taken off of them. Now we're going to kind of mock up how this stand is going to come together. On the outside here I have the 24-inch sections, and then I have the 18-inch pieces sandwiched in the middle here. I'm going to start by marking the center of my outside feet. So in my case they're 24 inches and the center will be 12 inches. So I'm going to make quick little marks here and then draw a line to make it easier to kind of line things up in a second. We do have to add those spacers, so this will kind of help us figure out exactly where those are going to go. Now I'm spacing them out to place the spacer, and I'm going to put one on each side just for now. Now just as an example, I'm going to show you how you can very precisely do this. So I put my square against that center line, and then I marked 1 1/4 inches out off each side. And then I'm going to create lines here, so these will line up exactly with that center piece there. You don't really need to do this. You can use the good old eyeball method, but if you want to be super precise, you're more than welcome to do that. Now we're going to line this all up and start by pre-drilling it. Now for this first one I'm doing it without clamps, but if you do have clamps they will really come in handy here. It'll make it a lot easier to hold things steady. You can do it without it, and I like to pre-drill a couple holes on that first board, and then I like to put 1 screw in just to kind of help keep things steady. 2 screws on each side of each board is really going to be sufficient to hold this thing together. They don't have to be perfectly straight or perfectly lined up, just good enough. So I'm going to start doing that here, and you'll see me put this thing together. Now that the feet are screwed on, we're going to have to put in the channels for the target stands themselves. So take an extra little piece of that 2x3 and sandwich another section of it in between this post that you cut earlier. So put 2 screws on one side and 1 screw in the center on the other side. 3 is more than enough to hold this piece in place. Now you'll want to keep it nice and tight. You can see me squeezing it really tight here. The tighter you can get that block, the less your target stands are going to wobble during the wind or after shooting them, etc. So try to get it nice and tight and things will stay together real good. Now here's a quick clip of me making them with clamps, and you can use any kind of clamps, C-clamps, or these simple squeeze clamps. They're incredibly useful. If you do have them, I highly recommend using them. If you don't have some, they're pretty inexpensive and they'll help out, but they're not necessary. So you can use them like this on these inside pieces to help keep them clamped nice and tight together. And then you can also use them here for the inside gap here. So it holds that other piece nice and tight and gives you a nice perfect fit. Now I'm test fitting the posts. They fit nice and snug, which is what I want. You can always bring a mallet to the range if you need to tap them in nice, but as you can see, they're a little too long. I'd like to find a good size for them, and one tip I've heard is to take 2 of these like NRA D1 targets or USPSA targets and then stack one on top of the other. This is generally how they post them at matches, but you can really make them any height you want. Now I personally am going to use 4 stands as 6-foot stands and then 1 as a 5-foot stand. I want a slightly shorter stand for shooting up closer, but you'll want to keep in mind how high your berm is at your local range. You just want to make sure that you don't place the target so high that you're shooting over the berm. Now it's time to take these stands to the range.